When serial killers go to court, the situation changes. They used to kill because they wanted power, but now the judge has the power over them. The judge decides their fate. Here are some serial killers reacting to being sentenced to life in prison. The BTK killer, the first serial killer on the list, tried to pretend to be sincere. Instead, his comments about his actions sounded like a speech at a fancy award show. He made it all about himself. Dennis Rader was called the BTK killer, which stood for bind, torture and kill, describing his extremely way of killing his victims. Since there is no death penalty in Kansas, he was sentenced to death life sentences in a row, without the possibility of parole. This was the harshest punishment they could give him, although many people believed he deserved an even harsher punishment. The next criminal we are talking about was very rude in court. Joseph James D'Angelo, also known as the Golden State Killer, committed crimes in the 1970s and 1980s. However, he wasn't caught until 2018. The police used a DNA from a family member to track down their family tree. By finding someone with a similar DNA, they realized that the person was related to the killer. Eventually, they identified the now elderly and weak man as the Golden State Killer. The report from LA Times describes how this person committed horrific acts. The attacks could last for hours, during which he repeatedly raped and sodomized women. He also tortured men by tightly binding their hands and feet, causing their skin to turn black. He even threatened to bring back the ears of their wives and girlfriends as a cruel promise. The description of the crimes committed by D'Angelo is truly disturbing. Most of these acts occurred almost 50 years ago, so he was an elderly man at the time of his capture. In fact, he was seen in a wheelchair and appeared disoriented by the presence of the judge and cameras during his trial. D'Angelo ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple murders. As a result of his guilty plea, he was spared the death penalty and instead was sentenced to life in prison. The decision to not give D'Angelo the death penalty for his heinous crimes sparked controversy. Opponents of capital punishment argue that it is often administered unfairly and can lead to execution of innocent individuals, particularly those who are the people of color, poor, or have mental illness. However, in D'Angelo's case, there is no question of his guilt. He confessed to the crimes, and the DNA evidence unequivocally linked him to the acts. Another point of controversy in the case was a significant amount of time that passed since the crimes were committed. The crimes committed by D'Angelo in the 1970s were not able to be prosecuted due to the statute of limitations. However, he was convicted in the connection with the abduction and robberies that occurred alongside these crimes, which took place more recently. The governor of California has since signed a bill to end the statute of limitations, a move promoted by cases like that of Golden State Killer and Bill Cosby, which highlighted the absurdity of such a rule. During his sentencing, D'Angelo offered a modest apology to the victims' family members, expressing remorse for his actions. Additionally, there seems to be an inconsistency regarding him being wheeled on a wheelchair, which may raise questions about his physical condition or demeanor during the proceedings. The camera footage from the same month of D'Angelo's sentencing shows him exhibiting peculiar behaviors in his cell. He is seen walking around, lifting himself onto the bed, and is standing on the table to observe the lights in his cell. Prosecutors have noted that this behavior mirrors actions D'Angelo took at the crime scenes over 4 decades ago, such as covering televisions or lamps with blankets. In other clips, he is shown exercising and using walking stick to enter his cell, as well as peering through the keyhole to ensure nobody's watching. These actions may provide insight into his mindset and habits, shedding light on his past behaviors and potential motivations. It is true that the Golden State Killer's deceit about being in a wheelchair may seem insignificant compared to the heinous crimes he committed. By pretending to be feeble, he may have hoped to garner sympathy and shift perception of him from a ruthless killer to an old, frail man. This manipulation of narrative reflects the killer's desire for control, a common trait among serial offenders. The district attorney recognized this attempt to control the customer's room perception and worked to ensure that the true nature of the killer's actions was not overshadowed by such tactics. While it is true that serial killers like Joseph D'Angelo often exhibit manipulative behaviors and lack of remorse, there have been cases where some individuals have shown signs of regret or guilt for their actions. However, it is important to note that these instances are rare and may not necessarily indicate genuine remorse. Each case is unique, and the motivation and psychological makeup of serial killer vary widely. In the case of D'Angelo's, his actions and demeanor as captured in the footage suggest lack of empathy and focus on deception rather than remorse. Jeffrey Dahmer's case is indeed a complex and debated one. His lack of emotion during his trial and his eventual acceptance of his sentence can be seen as a glimpse of humanity amidst his heinous crimes. Dahmer himself acknowledged his sickness and the absence of hatred towards his victims. While some may argue about the nature of his actions, Dahmer's own self-reflection on his mental state sheds light on the complexity. While some may argue about the nature of his actions, Dahmer's own self-reflection on his mental state sheds light on the complexities of his psyche. It is fortunate that he is no longer a threat to society and he is receiving the necessary treatment in prison. The death penalty was not an option in Wisconsin because it was abolished in 1853. Instead, the harshest punishment they could give him was multiple life sentences. Dahmer claimed he was insane, and his lawyer argued that he wasn't evil, he was just sick. The lawyer, Gerald Boyle, said that no one on earth could do anything worse than what Dahmer did. He said that if Dahmer was sane, he would be as bad as the devil, but because he was sick, he wasn't like the devil. Despite how strange it may seem, Jeffrey Dahmer was considered as a psychopath. It seems there was a moment when Dahmer smiled at a fake story in the newspaper about him during a break in the trial. He showed the newspaper to the boy's sister-in-law, Carol, who was sitting behind him. The tabloid headline falsely claimed that Dahmer had killed his cellmate. Despite his reprehensible behavior, Dahmer expressed a desire for forgiveness and mentioned that he should have stayed with God. He acknowledged the pain he caused, referring to the Holocaust, and expressed a willingness to give his life to bring back the loved ones of his victims. While in prison, Dahmer tried to change for better. He met often with the minister Roy Radcliffe and felt truly sorry for what he had done. However, some people think Dahmer may have had a secret reason for becoming a born-again Christian. The prison pastor can help you in prison to make things a bit easier for you. During his time in prison, Dahmer was taken out of isolation and allowed to be with other inmates. He also had more freedom. He was diagnosed with the borderline personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, and other psychotic disorders. He wasn't the typical psychopath who couldn't distinguish between right or wrong. He knew his actions were wrong, but he still chose to do them. Dr. James Fallon later mentioned that it was never definitively proven that he was a psychopath, but many people assumed he was for simplicity's sake. He displayed emotional empathy towards others, which is uncommon in psychopaths. Throughout most of the trial, Dahmer remained emotionless.